Zipping up the front pocket he'd rummaged through, Jackson slid the rucksack back onto his shoulder and buckled it across his vest. "Good luck," Jackson said as he started to continue on. "Thanks again. I'm Rick, by the way," Rick replied. Jackson turned around and looked at Rick. He gave him a terse smile. "Stay dry, Rick," Jackson replied. "You're going to want to beat that weather to the shelter." Before Rick the talker could say anything back, Jackson disappeared around the bend in the trail. He stepped up his pace now. Rick had slowed him down. His mind told him to double-check his GPS to see how far it was, but that would only take more time. Time Jackson didn't have. He was on a mission. He was here to find someone. And Jackson Clay was good at finding things.
You're tuned in to Let's Find Out with Diego, brother. Diego Mania running wild on you.
Are you curious about the unknown, the unexplainable? Do you find yourself intrigued by the mysterious and paranormal side of our world? Join us on an adventure into the world of inexplicable discoveries and investigations that may someday give us the final answer as to what may be behind the veil of reality. The borders of space and time have opened once again, and transmitting from the mountains of West Virginia, it's time once again for Let's Find Out with Diego. The universe is waiting for you.
The borders of space and time have opened once again and transmitting from the mountains of West Virginia. It's another episode of Let's Find Out with Diego. Thank you for taking this journey with me. On this episode of Let's Find Out, our guest is not just any novelist. He's a former freelance writer with a fascinating journey from owning a bakery to selling fireworks out of shipping containers. Fast forward to today, he stands proudly as a multiple award-winning novelist in the mystery and suspense genre, captivating readers with his highly beloved series, The Woodsman, Country Roads, and Chasing Devils. His bold tone of voice and storytelling has earned him accolades and a dedicated fan base eagerly awaiting each new release. All this plus more. Please welcome back to Let's Find Out our good friend and supporter, author BC Lienesch. BC, my friend, welcome back to Let's Find Out, man. It's been almost a year now, man. I'm looking forward to catching up with you.
How's it going? That was awesome. I'm going to take you everywhere I go and have you do promos for me.
No, I mean, I could be like, you know, how in the ring, how the announcer.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. You're going to be my hype man. Paul Bettany at the beginning of A Knight's Tale. You know what I mean?
Oh, I can do. That's one of my favorite movies, man. That's a good choice. Very good choice. And, no, so my friend, we talked on the pre-interview. That's been almost a year since you've been here, and I met you not long after that at Blends. I think it was in Ashburn. There was some signings there, and we got to meet you, and I got to meet you, you know, and I really appreciate you. And in fact, I won't turn the camera around because the whole thing will fall apart. But if you were in the studio to my right, I have an autographed poster framed of the Woodsman. So I really appreciate you doing that because it's
absolutely.
I framed it right away and put it right back up on the office. I'm gonna send you a picture of that. I'll DM you that picture. And
for sure.
So since then, one of the things also that we spoke about is you've been nonstop you're a book promoting machine. You got high energy. I look at your posts online almost every day. You're always out there signing books and doing these conventions. And the one question I ask you is, where do you find this energy?
You know, I actually, the marketing side of being an indie author is the part that I'm like least comfortable with. I'm not naturally someone that is, you know, if I ever had to do something on stage, I would be terrified or that sort of thing. Even when we do, you know, book panels, we did a book panel with a mutual friend of ours, Jim Reed, and it was just no more than a few people in a coffee house. And even that gave me the jitters, but it was actually a really close friend. First of all, you don't have a choice in this, even if you're the biggest, you're James Patterson, you still have to promote yourself. And so I do it partially because I believe in my work, but also I have a close friend that is just a marketing, I say it lovingly, but a marketing dork. And she was on me. She went when I first started writing, saying, you need to be doing X, you need to be doing Y, you need to be doing Z. And I was going, I know. And she said something that's always hung with me, which was, she goes, if you won't tout your own name, how can you expect other people to tout your name? And so whenever I don't want to do that, whenever I'm feeling the grind, I'm like, I need to do a social media post today and I've got nothing, and I don't know what to. I hear that voice, gotta tout your own name, because how else is anyone else gonna tout your name? So
Oh, absolutely true. In fact, I'll tell you this: when I first met you at that over in Ashburn at Blends, that was the first event I've ever done. Because normally I'm a little I don't like to leave the house too much or travel, even though I mean an hour
right,
drive to
right.
set up a table. But it's probably the best thing that I ever done. Is I've done several since then. And you mentioned something earlier. So when you have someone who writes a book, a novel, and it's released, I've noticed this thing to where, I'm not going to name names, to where someone releases a book and that's it.
Hmm.
And then they say, well, why isn't it selling? Why isn't it? Well, you're not doing the marketing part, which is what you mentioned. And so if you were to count this year, how many you've done so far, how many have you done?
Book events.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. I couldn't. I think so. Last year we did like a mini sort of quote unquote book tour for the release of Chasing Devils. Um, that rate was not sustainable. It was fun, but it was literally every weekend or every other weekend. So I think last year was our highest. I did. I think the total was like 20, 25, something like that for the year. This year's been a little bit less. I've tried to dial it back to like once a month or something or so. So it's been less. I think I've done almost. I'm approaching 10 or so this year. But it's been, even then it's been branching out. I did my first book signing in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania last weekend, and that was like not only my first signing in Pennsylvania, but personally my first time ever being to Harrisburg. So I'm scaling back the number, but it's still branching out and trying to engage different readerships out there.
And it's a beautiful thing because I tell you, only experienced this in a small scale level where you're in an event and somebody comes up to you and says, "Hey, I heard this latest episode. So I just read your book." And I think it's important to make that connection with the listener or the reader because not only do you promote a long standing relationship with that reader, but I think it's good for us because now we have people that are really into what we're doing.
Absolutely. There are people I talk with that I've met at book signings that I chat back and forth on Instagram, I chat back and forth on Threads or Twitter. Just they'll reach out, they'll buy my book. They might not know me from Adam when they first meet me, and then they'll reach out on Instagram or something, be like, I read your book, I love it. And I'll be like, first of all, thank you. It's always amazing to get that kind of feedback. But then we'll just like we'll shoot the breeze, and there's definitely a handful of people that I've gotten to know because we've engaged through the sort of the writer reader relationship.
Yeah, and you're right because I'll get or follows on Instagram, on X, on Facebook, and it's probably one of the better experiences I've had because every once in a while, at least on my end, they say, "Hey, I heard this episode, but you could have just touched on this a little bit more." And I take people's advice, whether I think it's out there or reasonable. So I take it all, and I think it's helped me to become a better interviewer or podcaster. I don't know how it works on the writer's end because I don't know if it's one of those things. It's a touchy subject to tell somebody, "Hey, you should have put this in your book or in your episode."
Oh, I don't mind. I don't mind feedback at all. I may uh, politely disagree with some of the feedback I get, but most of it, I absolutely love, especially when I'll people say, "Oh, I love this character," or "I love that character," and it's interesting. I think we talked about this last time I was on when I first wrote my first book, The Woodsman. The main character is Jackson Clay, but he quickly meets his cohort Bear, and I think probably the vast majority of readers love. I if I had a if I had to take a straw poll in my head of how much I hear, oh, I love Bear versus I love Jackson. Not that they don't like Jackson, but that I actually get them saying to me, I love Bear. It's easily 4 or 5 to 1.
Wow, and it was one of the things we're going to actually talk about Jackson Clay here in a minute. Fascinating story, and but before we get into that, because your story is a fascinating story, my friend. As I'm reading your bio, going over my notes from before and now, we covered this a while back. But if you don't mind, let's go back to the days where before you became a novelist.
Sure.
You've owned a bakery and you worked in a firework stand that it was basically in a shipping container.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
and so I asked there's a couple of questions in one, but when did that switch happen where you put it all out there and says, I'm going to be a writer? And two, on days like this when it's hot as hell out there, man, and you're out there in a shipping container selling fireworks, it's gotta be just dreadful.
Oh, it's not the heat, it sounds a cliche, it's not the heat, but it's the humidity. When we walk out, and it's 95 degrees and 95% humidity, when you and I are filming this or recording this rather in late July, it's just a few weeks removed from Independence Day, and those trailers were everywhere. And I remarked to my wife, we went through that wicked heat wave where top 100. I said, I am so glad I am not working fireworks this season. But that was more of like just a college job. You kind of you were able to you had to work like every day, 10 hours a day for a month, but then you got the rest of your summer off and you had a little bit of spending money in your pocket. So definitely was an experience. I don't know that it's a sustainable thing, but if you're trying to make some cash while you're in college and working during the summers, it's definitely I could do 4 or 5 of these episodes just with stories from the fireworks stand. The bakery was a little bit different. That was um uh it started actually with my wife, then girlfriend at the time. Her endeavor, she's an amazing baker. And she had started just kind of selling at the farmers market and stuff. And she'd started doing it more out in your neck of the woods in West Virginia. And I was the one that kind of said, I wonder if you could scale this thing and try to, you have a legitimately amazing products, as my gut can bear witness to. But maybe we could scale this thing and make some real money at it. And ultimately we chose to move on from that. It didn't work out quite the way we planned, but I mean, if I say everything happens for a reason, the cliche police will descend from the ceiling and arrest me. But everything does happen for a reason, because I'm here, and my wife has an amazing career in pet care, and neither of us would have opened these doors if we had not first tried the bakery and then ultimately moved on from it.
You know, and I believe that a lot of us share something similar to where it's one of those things you and I'm not saying that you hated doing it, but sometimes you have to do the things you hate in order for you to blossom and do the things that you love. And that you're doing, my friend, right now as a novelist. And you were a freelance writer at one time. Is that the time where you honed in on your skills and eventually broke out to just doing this on your own?
Right. So I'd always been interested in writing. Um, even when I was in college, I didn't go to. I ultimately choose a different major, but always been interested in writing. And right around the time I was doing the baking thing, I was also writing for a website called guysnation.com that has since moved on to crossed over the rainbow bridge of websites. But the I was writing for them, and I ended up becoming something of a featured columnist and sports editor. And when that also came to pass, I tried to strike out on my own as a freelance writer, and ultimately I was frustrated with the quote unquote gig economy. You when you're a freelance writer, you're working literally, job to job that you pick up, and you don't get a say in what you're writing. You're really a tool for someone else to utilize. And it was actually my wife that really pushed me into. She said, you've always talked about trying to write creatively, trying to write a novel, trying to write a book. If you want to pursue that, I've got us. We're good. We're in a spot where we could, try this thing. And so it was really her that pushed me to do it.
Amazing, my friend. This show, I couldn't do this show without my wife's support because she's the one that gives me the go juice to go because she supports everything that I do, and sometimes it's like, hey, you may not want to write it this way, or you may want to do this and that, and she gives me advice. I say if it weren't for her, I don't think this show would be going.
Oh,
Now making 2
absolutely.
years, yeah.
I would not be here without my wife. That is it's an irrefutable fact. You met Meg at Blend Coffee. She goes to almost all my signings, and not just as a emotional cheerleader. She's helping set up, break down. And these are her. A lot of times, these are her one only 1 or 2 off days a week, and she's to use that time to then come out and support me is just incredible. I don't know how I outkicked my coverage with her, but I somehow managed to.
Oh, man, you're good, and it's a beautiful thing, and I can't say it enough. If it weren't for their support, you not we'll be in two different situations right now. If I'm telling you the truth, right there, and so you talking about the freelance writing? Was that involved ghostwriting as well?
No, it was more like writing content for websites and stuff. That's what I was saying. You didn't really get to. Uh, I didn't get to use my creative juices that I had. It was just strictly either creating like marketing content or informative content. Like I said, mostly for websites. Um, and I didn't do it for that long before I got I guess noticeably frustrated if my wife picked up on it. And I didn't do it for very long before I ultimately decided to try this, which probably actually made it easier to try this.
And now, which brings us to this, because you have a very popular series out now, and I call it in the Jackson Clay universe. So, if we're going to go down these three novels with the Woodsman, Country Roads, Chasing Devils,
Yep.
for the listeners of Let's Find Out that have yet to read your book or download or meet you in person, can you give us a look into the trials and tribulations of Jackson Clay, what he's been going through these three novels so far?
Yeah. So Jackson Clay is a character who he's gone through personal tragedy. You learn about it early on in the first book. He lost his son was his son disappeared from a theme park when he was very young and never found out what happened to him. His marriage to his wife ultimately became collateral damage to that trauma, And through that, he's found a purpose in helping those that have fallen through the cracks. And so, for instance, in the Woodsman, it's very personal that he gets involved with the case of a teenage girl that's gone missing. And when the leads dry up, the detective assigned the case reluctantly accepts his sort of unorthodox help. And he gets involved with that. And he comes to meet his cohort who continues on in the books with him. I call him a rural lifestyle enthusiast, which is a fancy term for redneck, named Bear. And in this, him and Bear go on. In the second book, a friend of Bear's is wrongfully accused and on the run, and so they get involved with that and figure out what's going on there. And then in Chasing Devils, it becomes very personal to Jackson Clay again, where his estranged ex-wife is killed under what is very clearly what was it's not even suspicious circumstances. She was killed, murdered, and initially it looks like Jackson Clay may have had something to do with her murder, and so for that reason he's forced to get involved. And then once he's involved, he wants to know what actually happened, obviously, and stuff comes to light about his past and what he thought he knew, and it to be true and is not true. And you'll have to read to figure out whatever everything that happens.
Absolutely. And with the theme of your stories, were you always was it your intention to write crime thrillers
It
or
was
ah
my so I was never a big reader growing up. I think people always imagine uh uh most writers were bookworms as children. I was not a big reader. I remember being in middle school, you know, dreading that we had to read A Tree Grows in Brooklyn or something like that. What happened was I found a Robert Crace novel in a Costco. Robert Crace is a crime thriller writer. He writes Los Angeles based novels. The movie Hostage with Bruce Willis was originally a Robert Crace novel. And I picked up this book, and it was talking about this bank robber that had to put his life back together, but is under the thumb of some nasty guys. And I read it, and I just became hooked. And then I found a genre I really love to read. And then so when I chose to write, I knew immediately what genre I wanted to write. And um, Robert Crace has a continuing pair of characters, Elvis Cole and Joe Pike. And I like to say that Jackson Clay and Bear Beauchamp, the characters I've created, are my twist on his characters. Elvis Cole is kind of this charismatic, wisecracking private eye, and Joe Pike is his sort of speak softly and carry a big stick muscle friend. And I kind of take those and flip those around, where Jackson Clay is soft spoken, but he's also the lead, and Bear is kind of outspoken and funny and congenial, but at the same time he can get real serious when he has to.
as I'm going to touch on something you said there. It started with kind of like with a book that you found at Costco, and that's the one that got you really serious into this theme of storytelling. Kind of like with me in this show, there was a one book when I was in elementary school that covered three subjects. I think it was a Bigfoot, Loch Ness monster, and UFOs. And ever since then, those whether people believe it or not, it's not. But I think the books are very important to somebody that I think it gets them into a different mindset. Um, and I know I'm rambling because I am going somewhere with this. So when you read that book and it took you to another place, and then your creative juices started going, and then here comes your career starts blossoming, eventually you have to pull more resources. What I mean is research, because I think the type of subjects that you cover, in my opinion, can get kind of complicated. So where did you pull all the information from? Because you also use a lot of local landmarks and stuff like that too, right?
I do. They there's that old phrase, write what you know, and there's a reason why my books take place in and around Virginia, because I know in and around Virginia. I I know Harrisonburg because I spent a lot of time out in Harrisonburg because I got married in Harrisonburg. There's a prepper farm in Country Roads in West Virginia that is pretty much inspired by my very real life brother and sister in law's farm in West Virginia. Um, so it's not out of the blue imagination. I'm taking things in my life I see it and going, oh, well, it'd be interesting if this was that, or this was so.
And when coming up with the names of your characters in your novels, do you go back to, like, it's gonna sound silly. Do you go back to a yearbook, like somebody you knew, and just borrow names here and there and just smash them up?
It's funny. I went back and forth on. I knew Jackson Clay had to have a name that was quote unquote normal, but also different enough that it was identifiable, right? You don't want John Smith, but you want something that's easy to that clicks like that. And so I'd kick around a bunch of stuff, and I'd first did my first thought was John Price, until I remembered that that is the name of a character in the Call of Duty franchise, and so I didn't want to mess with that. And I ultimately settled on Jackson Clay, only to realize about halfway into my first book that it probably clicked into my head because I was a huge Sons of Anarchy fan, and there was Jackson Teller and Clay Teller, and those words or names were probably pinballing around my head, and I put them together. But I think it works. And then Bear, he's just a bear, man. I mean, he's a big burly dude. It just that's not his legal name. You learn his legal name is Archibald, which he obviously naturally hates. And but he's just Bear is his nickname. He is Bear. There's for him it was a very logical name.
No, and it's similar to when actors or rock stars, they pick their names. I think they go a similar route that you did, because they'll pull influences from like one person or another. They mash the names together, and you get great rock star names or actor names as well. So we're going from writing their novels, and then now it's my understanding that one of your books is now available in an audio format.
It is, and amazingly, both amazing that I was selected and amazing on my business that I didn't pay a dime to produce it. What happened was I decided it was time to explore audiobooks. We talked about book signings, and probably one of the it easily one of the top three questions I get at book signings was, "Oh, is it available in audiobook?" And I was saying, "I'm trying, but that's a whole different beast." And come cut to the end of last year, and I'm thinking, I really need to wrap my head around this audiobook thing. And I started to check out how to do it on my own. Um, there's a website that connects authors with narrators on a marketplace, and so I was digging into that, and a narrator friend that I had met at AuthorCon, which is a yearly book convention in Williamsburg, Virginia. Um, she reached out and said, "Hey, this audio company, Audio Sorceress, is putting on a Kickstarter project where they're going to pick an indie novel, where one of the a smaller publication that it would be a real financial strain to produce an audiobook for, and they're going to pick one worthwhile novel and do it. You should apply. And I thought, yeah, I'll apply. It's you know, it's easy, it's free. Takes half an hour to apply. Really didn't think anything of it, and amazingly, I was selected. And so Audio Sorceress was amazing. It's held by two incredible women, Marnie Young and Denise Black. They were so amazing and supportive about helping me put together the Woodsman audiobook. And yeah, you can find it on Audible. You can find it on Amazon, which is Audible. And I believe you can find it on iTunes.
So on all the awesome platforms. And I'm gonna ask you this: where were you when you learned that your book was chosen?
I was on a video call with them. So there's a video out there that they put out there. They ran it by me before they put it out there, but they actually brought me onto a video call under the ruse of that I had been. So I was in the top 10 of the guys that they were considering, and they wanted to do another interview. And I said, sure. And it was actually a ruse to just get me on the camera to tell me with a camera in my face that I had been selected. So I know where I was, and if you follow me on social media, it's been a few months. I think it was back in January I posted it, but you can find it. It's funny, and I'm glad that I threw a real shirt on before I did it. I almost did it in PJs, and I'm glad I didn't.
Well, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm wearing PJs right now, but
Right,
but I have a hoodie on and all. But that's okay.
right,
No,
right, right.
well, congratulations on that, and also
Thank you.
which brings me to this point of now you're also a multi-award winning author. Can you tell us when you won the award and what the award is for?
Yeah, so I had put in my information for the Lit Star Book Awards. Um, Submitted what was eligible of my works, and I found out kind of mid-June of this year that I was named the finalist for general fiction for Country Roads, which is my second novel, and general fiction for Chasing Devils, which is my third novel, as well as the book series together as under Best Book Series or Outstanding Book Series. Um, and so I was thrilled about that. And then I found out in July that I had won not only one but all three, which I didn't even know was I had prepared myself that it was not I didn't know that they were going to select multiple winners for general fiction. So I didn't even think it was mathematically possible for me to win all three, but they did, and I thank them for uh, considering my books, and I can't thank uh, everyone that worked on them enough, from my editor to, like we already talked about, the family and friends that support you along the way. It's been really awesome.
No, it is really awesome, man. I mean, congratulations on that as well,
Thank
because
you.
hard work always pays off. There's a science to that, and it's absolutely true. And now that we're in July's almost over, going into August. There's a few months left in the year. What are your next appearances going to be?
I will be at I have some things I'm working on in August. I don't know when this will come out. I don't know. I can't lock those in. I will definitely be at the Shepherdstown Book Festival in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. I think that's September 21st. It's that Saturday. I will be in Berryville, Virginia, at the Reed local tent at the Clark County Farmers Market. A guy named Jason Queen does a really awesome job of showcasing local authors and trying to cross pollinate that with people that are looking to shop local in a setting like a farmers market. So I'll be out there doing book sightings. And then December, excuse me, I'll be in Winchester at the Winchester Book Gallery for a part of their Old Town Winchester holiday market. And I will be in Midlothian, Virginia at the Second and Charles out there 2 days the week after to do book signings at the Second and Charles there. So that would be December 14th and 15th, and that'll wrap me up for the year.
Oh, it's just a few events. I mean, no,
Right?
seriously, that's
Yes. Right.
yeah, most of them are not too far from my neck of the woods. So I'm definitely gonna make one of them, especially talking about Berryville and Shepherdstown. I can throw a rock at it. So be expecting me to go over there and say hi one more time. And
Absolutely.
I'm gonna when you do a lot of these events, and then or especially talk about AuthorCon, which is what did you say it was? Down in Williamsburg, was it
It
area
is.
or
Yeah, it's put on by a charity called Scares That Care, and it's just a phenomenal organization. It's all volunteer based. So if you donate to them, or if you go to one of their events that raise money, literally all your money is going to who they're helping. They're down there on their own time, on their own dime. It's their um I don't know if he's the head organizer, but he's the head of organizing AuthorCon anyways, Brian Keene, who is a very well-known horror writer. And they do an awesome time every year throwing that. It's kind of prom for book nerds. Everybody hangs out for a weekend, and if you're a reader, you can go and meet all these amazing authors. If you're an author, you can go and meet all these amazing authors. It's an awesome time. Our mutual friend Jim is going to join me next year down there.
which brings me to the next question. When talking about, you said it was a nerd prom, right? Sort of
Right.
thing. All
Book
right,
nerd prom. Yeah, yeah.
book nerd prom. When you're all together after the books are signed and it's time to get together and chat over a meal or a few drinks, what do y'all talk about? I would assume that most of y'all maybe tired of talking about writing or anything else but writing, or do you actually talk about the process as well?
It can range from anything and everything. I mean, it's like going out with your buddies. If you went out with your buddies to a bar and said, "What did you talk about?" You'd say, "I couldn't even tell you." The conversation ranges from books to whatever's going on at the time. Yeah, it's a good time. It's held at the DoubleTree down there, and we are every night. Some contingent of authors is closing down that hotel bar, so it's always a good time.
It is, and sometimes people will tell you stories that you knew absolutely nothing about your friends. So, for instance, I'll throw this out there. I did an event not long ago. We went out to lunch later that day, and the gentleman proceeded to tell me that his father was a famous pro wrestler in Venezuela. I mean, that's amazing stuff. So sometimes you kind of get those little facts in there, little stories. It's part of the fun, right?
Oh yeah, oh absolutely. You meet a guy who knows a guy. We went to when we were doing um, Saturday night this past time we were there. I met a guy who he'd read my books and he came back and then he introduced me to his friends and we were waiting for one of the programs that they were doing later that night and we just hung out and got to talking and they talked about all these crazy stories of all these crazy people they've met over the course of their lives and it's just a good time.
No, I bet it is, man. And definitely, I do love going to these places, and meeting people, and learning from people that are doing it longer than me, and trying to absorb some of that knowledge. So, for the listeners of Let's Find Out that want to know more about what you're doing and how to get a copy of your books, where is the best place for them to find out?
So there's stuff that's this episode is about how crazy this summer has been in some part. There's things rapidly moving, but at least as of right now, you can find them on Amazon. You can find them I think you can find them on barnesandnoble.com. I think you can find them on booksamillion.com. If you want them directly from me, and then that way you can actually order signed copies, I have an Etsy shop up, and you just go there, you pick out the book you want. There's a link on my website, bclnovels.com. Go there, pick which book you want, shoot me a message in the personalization, and I'll ship it out. As I joke with readers, I am always happy to vandalize your book for you.
No, and you have a very nice handwriting, man. I'm looking at it right here, and it's well worth
That's a lie.
No,
I have
it's
awful handwriting.
it's like a doctor. I've seen prescriptions like that.
That's what I'm saying. I have awful hand. I should have been a doctor with my handwriting.
Oh no, hey, you never know. We're all still young. We'll make it happen.
I will kill people if I become a doctor. I'm gonna stick to writing. Thank you.
I understand that, my friends. So, thanks again for coming back on the show. And you know what? No, I'm not going to leave you quite yet. I'm going to ask you one last question before I go.
Let's go. I got nowhere to be.
I got nowhere to be and all the time to get there, my friend. So, before we go, what are you working on now?
So I'm working on a departure from the Jackson Clay series. I wanted to go. If you know my story about how I ended up indie publishing and creating my own brand, the short story is I wrote my first book, was ready to go, and then it was right at the end of 2019. And I don't know if you're a history buff, but there was a global pandemic at the time, and basically all the publishing houses shut down. So I waited a few months, and ultimately just chose to start my own publishing brand and put it out myself. But I always wanted to go back to that to try to query different publishers. And so I knew I had to do a different story away from Jackson Clay, because that was firmly with my own sequels and this and that. So, and I also wanted to, I guess, prove it to myself that I could do something other than a Jackson Clay novel. And so this is an arson-based thriller, where a television producer believes that she produces for a show that kind of brings you live action from firefighters and rescue agencies around the country. And she starts to believe that an arsonist is targeting where her show is filming. And so she has to sleuth that out. And then once she gets close to the truth, then she kind of gets in the crosshairs of the arsonist. And I think it's a really entertaining story. I'm putting the finishing touches on it, but yeah, I'm working on that. It's probably been the most research I've done for a novel leading up to it. I'm not someone that knew a lot about starting fires criminally. So and I always want to. That's the big thing about my books, is I want to make them believable. I love a good action flick, but when it's just so crazy out there that it takes you out of the story, that's not my style. So I really wanted to get into what it's like and what fire investigation is like. And so you get a little bit of that, and there's still the amateur sleuth angle. So hopefully readers like it when it's good and ready and out there.
I'm already on the hook. It all sounds great, my friend. And when that book finally drops, if you don't mind, please come back on the show, because I'm all fired up and I really want to talk about it once it's released.
Absolutely. Yep. It's nearing its a finished manuscript. Like I said, I want to talk to some publishers about that. I don't know how long that'll take, but hopefully it won't be too long before it's out there for people to read.
Excellent, man. And I really appreciate you being on the show, and definitely we'll bring you back, man. We'll talk about it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. This has been another excellent episode of Let's Find Out with Diego. Please check us out on all our social media pages, as well as on YouTube, and we're also on Rumble. like, share, and subscribe. Also, Let's Find Out is on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. Catch the show on Saturdays at 2 a.m. For more information, please visit KGRADB.com. That's KGRADB.com. Thank you for taking this journey with me. Until next time, my friends.
Let's find out with Diego, the power of Diego Mania.
All content for Let's Find Out is property of co-host Diego and is served directly from our servers with no modification, redirects, or rehosting. All celebrity impersonators are paid performers. The impersonated celebrities do not endorse or promote any views or opinions expressed by our guests, co-host Diego, or Let's Find Out. The information shared on Let's Find Out is provided on an as-is basis, with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness.